All right, everyone, welcome back again. This will be our last arc welding practice one before you actually do your arc welding. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about some things I probably should have included in the last couple of videos and kind of forgot. So I want to talk about tack welding first, and that's T-A-C-K. If you look at this piece, you know, this is a piece that I put together and I just started welding right here. Okay, what happens when you just take off and start welding is the parts up here get super hot, but then as they cool, it shrinks down, and the distance in between my fingers actually gets less and less. Well, what happens is, if you just keep welding like that, the gap at the bottom will just keep getting wider and wider and wider, and our parts won't be the way that we wanted them to be when we weld them together. And so to keep that from happening, we do what's called a tack to hold the two pieces together. If you look at this piece right here, I've done two small welds, one on each side. The purpose of that is to keep it from separating as I weld it from the expansion and contraction of the metal as it heats up and cools. You notice both of these welds are super small. That's what a tack is. A tack is meant to be a small weld. And so before you weld anything together, this is the first thing you should do. You should do a tack on each side. If you're doing something like a T-weld, this could be a little bit more challenging to tack together because you don't have gravity working on your side here. So in that case, then we're going to use a welder's magnet to temporarily hold the two pieces together. What this does is it allows you to tack the part together, and then after that's done, you remove the magnet so that you can weld it together. You don't want to keep the magnet on there, otherwise the magnet gets heated up and cooled down too many times. The actual magnet inside of here starts to get brittle and breaks, and then we have to replace the magnet. After you have it tacked together, when it's time to actually weld it, you want to pretend like the welds aren't even there, the tacks aren't even there. That means starting your puddle right here, continuing to weld, and just weld right through this last tack like it's not even there. Don't try to use the tacks as part of your weld. They'll just get consumed in your first puddle as you start and roll along here. So just pretend like your tacks aren't there when you weld it up. Okay. The next part I wanted to talk about, and I should have included this in the other videos, is how far to actually weld on the rod. So if you look at the rod, you can see the numbers. Okay. We want to consume the entire rod. We don't want to weld half of it and then grab another one. We want to use the rods up because they cost money, but we don't want to just keep welding until we get all the way up to the electrode holder. The reason why is the electrode holder is insulated, has plastic around it so you don't accidentally shock yourself or arc it on anything. And the closer you get to the electrode holder, the hotter it gets, and that plastic starts to melt away. And so a good gauge of where to stop when you're welding, like when you're actually running a rod, is when you reach the numbers. You can burn up the numbers a little bit, but once you get to that point, that's when chuck the rod. Time to grab a new one and keep going. Don't send the welder back or the box back with a bunch of half burned rods. Burn up the rods, but burn them to this point. Don't go any further. Okay. The last part I want to talk about that I didn't talk about with the other videos is when you actually get started, what's going to happen to you for sure is you're going to have a lot of rods sticking. And what happens is you'll try to start your arc and you'll be too close and the rod will actually weld right to the piece. And you have to get it off there in a short time, because when it's sticking to the piece, we still have current flowing through the rod, and the rod itself is going to get red hot, and it'll get, if you just let it sit there, it'll get so hot it'll turn red and the insulation will fall off of it, and it'll just fuse more and more to the part. So the moment that it sticks to it, what you want to do is you want to give the electrode holder a hard whip at a 90-degree angle to break the rod off, and that's going to happen to you. That's also why I recommend using the welding table and clamping stuff down when you weld it. That way, when you go to try to whip it off the piece, you're not picking up the steel with you and having that issue to deal with. Okay, when that happens, you may end up with a situation where the end of your rod, the flux around the end breaks off a little bit, and whenever that happens, it seems like the rod doesn't want to weld very well again. And so if you have to, on a piece of scrap metal or something, Just scratch the rod a few times to burn up the end of it so that you're down to where we're insulated around the end again. Okay, but the rod sticking is for sure going to happen to each one of you. So make sure that you have a plan of dealing with it. Clamp the piece down. As the moment it happens, just whip the rod hard to the right. If you can't get it off, just disconnect the electrode holder from the end, let things cool down, and then deal with it to get it off. Okay? All right, best of luck, everybody.